Hello, my name is Michaela Bauer, and I am presenting Module 7 mini case study, Family Involvement. Okay, so going to talk about a few things. So we're going to have my summary. I'm going to answer question 1, question 2, question 3, and then I had some final thoughts, like a personal reflection I wanted to talk about after reviewing this case study. So, number 1, the summary. So let's talk about the characters. We have Joel Pham. He is the student in the main story. Mr. and Mrs. Pham, and they're the parents of Joel. Mr. Rolnick, he is the teacher. He's the teacher who is most concerned about why his parents aren't volunteering, giving their time. They talk a little bit about, they mention it once, Miles. He is a student and he's the co-science fair partner. And then we have Mrs. Smith. She is another teacher. She's taught there a little bit longer. And this isn't like a true character, but it's something that comes up, and so I feel it's important to be mentioned. They talk about past teachers and having a bias. So let's talk about the situation. So Joel would like to compete in the science fair, and the teacher, Mr. Rolnick, would like to discuss this with his parents and Miles' parents to make sure that each student will be doing their fair amount of the work. He is afraid since Pham's parents don't volunteer, Joel and his parents will not do their fair share of the work. So it all comes down to his parents volunteering, not volunteering, and the issues behind that. So the issue, the parents are expected to volunteer and the Phams have not volunteered at the school. The school believes that by parents being involved in volunteering helps towards student success. So one might be able to draw the conclusion that Mr. Rolnick thinks that because they don't volunteer, they don't help towards their student success. So the problem, Mr. Rolnick fears that the parents who don't do their fair share of the work to ensure Joel and Miles' part of the project will be divided equally amongst the two students. So again, this comes back to if the parents are there and playing a role, then he would feel better about this. Concerns, this leads to Joel potentially dropping out of the science fair and Miles doing more work than he is required. It kind of depends how you read it. I could read it both ways, showing that he was drawing this conclusion that Miles might end up doing more, but then there was a conversation with a parent, which maybe led to, oh, maybe Joel's going to drop out. We'll see. So, question number 1. Let's talk about the facts of the Phams and my experience. So factors. I think something that plays into this, after Mrs. Smith talked, one of the other teachers, there's some past experience when they attended school. There's some trauma involved. They were new, they're Vietnamese, and they're new to the area, and they were only Vietnamese people there, and because of that, the teachers at the time had a bias against them. And so, knowing that information, maybe the parents are very reluctant to help because they were afraid that their experience is going to either judge or cloud their son's experience, or, they don't want to be involved. Another fear could be that the approach Mr. Rolnick is taking is just a little too severe, and maybe, again, it's going back to that trauma. My experience, I've mostly had positive experiences. Parents tend to remember how great band was, and they always want to help, and they want to be there, and they want to go to the shows and the competitions and the concerts. So I, within my own program, have not had that personal problem. Now, negative, the community we live in is a smaller rural community, and there's sometimes that thought that, well, I won't do it, so someone else will, so I don't have to worry about it. Someone else will fill in. Someone else will make sure it's taken care of. And then, so that leads to, we have the same families who do this all the time. So we'll have volunteering, we'll have our go-to, like 10 families that we know will always volunteer to help. Okay, question number 2. So, reaching out, I would begin by giving a survey to the students, asking them how their parents feel about the school environment and past experiences. Kids nowadays aren't always going to come out and say things, but they'll type things, and, giving a basic survey like that to the students will let you know, okay, these things are talked about at home. Then, depending what the students say, I would then send a survey out to the families and to ask about their experience with the school and participation and how they feel. Follow up with positive things that are happening about the school. Maybe we need to do school tours, plan special events for the parents to be there. My experience, I have found living in a small rural community that typically the families who are dissatisfied, they send their kids to another school. If they are that upset about the education and their experience, they will send them somewhere else. They're not afraid to show their distaste. Barriers with this, for staff, I would want to talk about them, the information sent out on the surveys, what was gathered, what wasn't gathered. I would like to find a way to bring families in, like I mentioned earlier, through positive experiences. Let's create those new bonds for those who might have some past experiences, trauma, and work hard to get those things fixed. So question number 3, parent involvement in my experience. So parent involvement, making sure the child has the correct materials. I think parent involvement can look a couple of different things. It can be, do they have things for their academics? Do they have the notebook, binders, pencils? Do they have the t-shirt, the things for their activities that they're involved in? Do they have the correct type of equipment or gear for their sports? Also ask about what is the best way to communicate with a parent. Every parent's different. Some like email, some like phone calls, some nowadays like text. Demonstrate a positive learning environment at home. If parents are positive about school and school experiences, the kids will tend to have that. And then I had just a complete out-of-the-box idea, because, taking from this case study, this family is Vietnamese. Maybe a way to bring this family together is seeing if they would be willing to help translate documents. Maybe there's more of a Vietnamese community, or, around us we have a huge Hispanic community, and so someone who can translate those documents would be good. My experience, again, parents who can and have the time will volunteer. Sometimes it just comes down to parents don't have the time off, so they can't, and they don't have the work schedule that's flexible. But I do know there is some parents who their way of showing their support is by coming to their kids' sporting events, games. They'll come to the concerts, or if there's other community events going on. So I had my own kind of personal final thought before we close this out. This case study honestly kind of bothered me. You don't have to be considered a good parent by showing up and volunteering. Yes, that's nice, and yes, that helps the school, but that's not the only way you're being a good parent. I think one of the most important things is your child well cared for? Is your child well fed? Do they have the materials necessary for school? Are they good kids? You don't have to show up to school to volunteer to be good parents. And honestly, this case study just tells me that this teacher is nosy. I don't care what the school thinks. I don't care that this is a presence set forward that all parents volunteer. I really don't care. This teacher's being nosy and needs to knock it off, in my opinion. If the family had a concern, I would think they would come forward. But those are my thoughts. So, thank you very much.